Let me tell you about a man named Sam Zemurray. Now, his is the story of an immigrant who started with literally nothing and built an empire on bananas. But this is way more than just a business success story. It's about how one man's personal ambition grew so massive, so powerful, it could actually redraw the map.
So that's the big question we're tackling today, and it's almost unbelievable when you say it out loud. How does a guy who sells fruit get into the business of regime change? I'm telling you, the real story is even wilder than you can imagine.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at his incredible rise, what people called the rise of El Amigo. Then, we'll dive into his first major power play in Honduras, a literal coup for bananas. From there, it's the epic clash in Guatemala. And finally, we'll try to get our heads around his really complicated legacy.
Now, Sam Zemurray's story doesn't start in some fancy corporate boardroom. Not even close. You have to picture this. It starts on the docks of the American South with a scrappy immigrant teenager who saw a huge opportunity that absolutely everyone else was missing.
And his rise was just unbelievably fast. He was born Schmiel Zemurray in the Russian Empire and gets to America when he's just 14. He pretty much immediately spots this niche nobody wanted, buying the overripe bananas, the ones about to spoil, right off the docks, and then racing to sell them inland. This wasn't just some side hustle. By 1905, that little operation became its own company, Coup Fruit. He was officially in the game.
But here's the thing. Just owning a successful fruit company, that wasn't enough for him. To really, truly dominate the banana trade, Zemurray realized he couldn't just control the ships and the trains. No, he had to control the actual countries where the bananas were grown. And that's what led him right into the messy world of international politics.
So, to lock down his supply, Zemurray starts buying up these huge chunks of land in Honduras. But then, the Honduran government threatens to hit him with new taxes that would slice right into his profits. For Zemurray, this wasn't just some business problem. This was a threat to his entire empire. And his solution wasn't to negotiate. Oh no, it was to change the government.
And his playbook for this was, well, it was stunningly simple and just incredibly audacious. Step 1. He funds a private army of mercenaries, led by an exiled Honduran general. Step 2. He uses that army to overthrow the existing government. And Step 3. He has the new, friendly president he just installed reward him with massive land grants and, you guessed it, basically zero taxes. It was, for all intents and purposes, a private, corporate-funded coup. And you know what? That kind of aggressive expansion paid off big time. By 1929, his company was so valuable that his biggest rival, the massive United Fruit Company, bought him out, and they paid him in stock worth over $31 million. We're talking about an almost unimaginable fortune back then. The guy who financed a coup was now sitting at the very top of the industry.
But get this, Zmurri wasn't done, not by a long shot. When the Great Depression hits, United Fruit stock completely tanks and he sees his fortune just evaporating. So, as a major shareholder, he storms into a board meeting, slams his fist on the table, and basically takes control of the very company that had bought him out just a few years earlier. The ultimate outsider was now the ultimate insider, running the most powerful fruit company on the planet.
Okay, so now he's at the helm of United Fruit, and Zamora is more powerful than he's ever been. But he's about to face his biggest challenge yet. And this is what leads to the most controversial chapter of his life, a head-on collision with the government of Guatemala. The whole conflict boiled down to one single policy: agrarian reform. Guatemala's democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, had a plan. He was going to buy back these huge, unused plots of land from corporations and give them to peasants who had no land of their own. For Arbenz, this was about social justice. But for Sam Zemurray, whose United Fruit was by far the biggest landowner in the country, it was a declaration of war.
So you have these two completely different stories being told. The Guatemalan government is framing this as just, basic economic fairness for its own people, but United Fruit, they started leveraging all the paranoia of the Cold War, and they painted this as something way more sinister, a Soviet-backed communist plot right on America's doorstep.
And with that narrative, Zemurray launched an all-out war of influence. He hired the best PR people to plant anti-Guatemalan stories all over the American press. He used his deep, deep connections to lobby politicians in Washington. He just relentlessly hammered this idea that the Arbenz government was a communist threat, a red menace. And it worked. It absolutely worked. I mean, just look at this quote from a U.S. State Department memo from the time. The company's argument that this situation was adverse to American interests was now official U.S. government policy. The line between what was good for United Fruit and what was good for the United States had completely disappeared.
The outcome was swift, and it was decisive. In 1954, the CIA orchestrated a coup, codenamed Operation PBS Success. President Arbenz was overthrown, and his agrarian reform policy was dead. For the second time in his career, Sam Zemurray had successfully helped topple a foreign government to protect his company's bottom line.
So, who was this guy really? Was he a brilliant, self-made entrepreneur who embodied the American dream? Or was he a ruthless exploiter who just trampled over sovereign nations for profit? Honestly, the answer you get depends entirely on who you ask.
It's incredible. The exact same series of events can be described in these radically different ways. You look at the U.S. diplomatic records and they talk about protecting business interests and ensuring stability. But then you read the historians and they describe it as financing a private army to overthrow a government for corporate gain. And the really chilling part? Both of them are describing the exact same thing.
When Zmurray died in 1961, he was a titan of American industry, no doubt about it. But his most lasting legacy might just be a phrase, banana republic. It's a term that has come to define the very thing he perfected, the use of overwhelming corporate power to bend and sometimes break entire nations. His life was a story of just staggering success, built on a foundation of profound, undeniable controversy.
Sam Zemurray's story really forces us to ask a question that's just as relevant today as it ever was. In our globalized world, where exactly is the line between a brilliant businessperson shaping a market and a corporate power subverting a nation? And maybe more importantly, who gets to draw that line?